supposed to talk about Zayn and Liam with a straight face.
It's like we can't do that.
Oh my God.
It's like, oh my God.
We're listening to old One Direction songs to get really pumped up.
I'm Maya Henry here by request, Josh Ovaye for collaboration with the Internet is Dead podcast. Please, Josh, be a guest on the podcast. We miss you.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
You look beautiful.
Yes.
You.
How are you doing? How's your day been?
Oh, not bad. Just was at work, but I'm excited for this conversation.
Dude,
We're
thank
so
you for
excited.
agreeing to this. We're really
Yeah,
excited to
thank
chat.
you.
Oh no, I feel like I was just talking about this with my mom that there needs to be a topic around like the fandom and stuff and just I feel like it's not really talked about. Like it's not, I
Yeah.
don't know, I just
Yeah.
never heard of anyone have like a podcast on it even. So I think it's a
Mhm.
really interesting like topic and stuff.
We're so excited because we both were like on Stan Twitter, and I was like pretty involved in One Direction Stan Twitter, and the One
Mhm.
Direction fandom was like crazy, and it's a crazy thing to look back on and reflect on now.
Also just like so like still affecting our like internet society too, because you can tell just by how people like reacted to you with like your recent TikTok about Zayn, where it's like you've had this book out for so long and now people are paying attention because you made a 5-second TikTok about Zayn and it's like, okay, guys,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Internet is Dead podcast. Today, we're really excited to be joined by Maya Henry. Maya is an author, an actress, model, and content creator. She's also the ex-fiance of Liam Payne, and recently she's been in the news as a result of a TikTok she made where she confirmed that Zayn was the One Direction band member who pushed Liam up against a wall. Hearing those like words come out of my mouth,
I
it
know,
doesn't
it's like
feel
Jesus
real. It's like, oh
Christ.
my God. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for speaking up about everything that you've experienced. To speak out about the abuse you've endured takes so much bravery and courage. I know that you received mixed reactions with One Direction fans accusing you of lying and sending you hate. But thank you for just continuing to speak about it and for being here today. It means so much for women. And it's just so important to hold men accountable, especially men who are famous and powerful. And I was watching one of your TikToks, and I know you mentioned something where you were like saying how you were fortunate to come from a good background, which is
Mhm.
why you were able to speak out about this and have a little bit of a security blanket to fall back on. And hearing that like just meant a lot, and it's so important because there are so many women out there who don't have that. So you sharing your story is so impactful. You sharing your story and all the other women who are coming forward now are all part of the reason why famous men won't be able to do this in the future and prey on young girls because we're all just collectively like building an awareness, acknowledging how fucked up like it is.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. There's been a lot of like, even though fandoms can be toxic, I feel like with me speaking out, I have gotten a lot of support from the One Direction fans. So
Mm.
as much as like I call some of them out, I really do applaud a big chunk of them because they have been supportive. And that's what kind of makes me upset is that I have a bunch of not only fans who have been in similar situations, but just young women or women in general. And they come to me with these stories and they're like, thank you for speaking up on this. But then it makes me sad that these other fans are, Maya's a liar, this and that. And then I'm like, how do you think that makes the other ones feel that have the same experiences? So
Mm.
there's the good and the bad, and I feel like we're getting better as a society and even as a fandom. I feel like it's progressed since, I mean, when I was a One Direction fan when I was like 15, it was like you couldn't say
Yeah.
Yeah.
anything about them.
Yeah, it was like so bad.
To start off, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself outside of all of this? Because I think a lot of people seeing this online don't actually like really know you besides maybe just like the TikTok you posted or the lens of Liam Payne's ex-fiance. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your background and like how you grew up because I know that you have some interesting lore. Like we were talking about it before you came on. I know your dad used to throw like really big parties and stuff. Your family had a reality show on YouTube.
So I'm from a small town in South Texas called Corpus Christi, and I moved to San Antonio when I was like 13 or 14. I grew up playing competitive tennis, so it was just tennis, and then I was homeschooled for most of my schooling, I would say, from like middle school and high school. And I kind of got into modeling and then moved to London, and then when I turned like 18 or no, 18 or 19, I started online school for creative writing and then transferred to NYU
Mm.
for creative writing and then hopefully going to law school next year. But yeah, I spent
That's
most
so
of my
cool.
childhood
That's
in Texas.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're also like 23, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So we're all the same age, and that's cool to like see
Yeah.
just like you being awesome and
Yeah.
being our
Thank
age,
you.
you know?
Yeah.
Bye. I don't know.
Growing up, I know you were kind of in a little bit of like celebrity spaces just because of what your dad did. And I saw that you had like Nick Jonas and Pitbull at your quinceañera, which is like a really interesting way to grow up when you're young, looking at these celebrities. Because I know for us, like who were just like fans, we had such an interesting perspective on that, where just like hearing that, we're like, that's insane, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely crazy, but I feel like also at the same time, like I had a very privileged upbringing, but at the same time, growing up in South Texas, like my mom really wanted to protect us, and I was just never, so then going to be with Liam and like living in London and being in that world, I feel like it was such a shock. Like there's things that you could never even imagine. So like I grew up traveling and I had a very worldly upbringing, but at the same time, I was very like I was homeschooled. I didn't go to high school
Mhm.
parties. I didn't really like leave the house or like try and sneak out. So I was just a very like normal kid at the same time.
Hmm.
Wasn't
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Brittany and I created this podcast kind of as a space where we can have conversations with people who were on the other sides of the parasocial relationships that we experienced being teenagers on Stay on Twitter.
Mhm.
Um, and I know that you were also like a One Direction fan. So you initially met Liam at a meet and greet is in 2015, is that right? Or
Yeah, so I wasn't my friend was a fan of One Direction, and for her birthday, they were like, "Oh, we have these tickets." My mom was like, "You need to go for your friend's birthday." And I was like, "Ugh, I don't really want to go." And I ended up having to go, and then I ended up falling in love with them. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're amazing." And so I became a fan. Like me and my best friend Ryan were like huge fans, went to the concerts and stuff. And people always think like, "Oh, yeah, I met Liam when I was 15." But it was in a meet and greet with like 1,000 other people. I wasn't like
Mm,
yeah,
conversation with him or
yeah,
I
yeah.
stayed in contact with him. It was just, you know, take the picture and go on. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, me and my friend were like huge fans of them. I wasn't really so much on like Stan Twitter, but I was very aware of how the fans were back then.
Hmm.
yeah,
And I would like all the conspiracy like YouTube videos and stuff they used to make. But yeah, I
yeah,
Yeah. The
wasn't.
shipping.
Yeah, all of
yeah,
like the couple like shipping couples and stuff. Like I'm very aware
Yeah.
of that, but
yeah.
wasn't like actively like tweeting and stuff.
So then you ended up like nothing came of that, and then you met him like later on when you got older.
Yeah, so I was a fan of One Direction and then they ended up splitting up and then from there I wasn't really a stan of like any of them particularly as solo artists. So
Mhm.
I kind of just I don't want to say like forgot about them, but I wasn't paying attention. And
Yeah.
then I was at a Dolce & Gabbana fashion show in Lake Como and I was walking and he was one of the performers for
Mm,
I guess one of the parties and that's how we ended up again. Like it was just really random. Yeah, I
That's
never like thought
yeah.
like meet and greet like, oh, I'm gonna date him. You
yeah.
Yeah.
know?
Some of what was like going around Reddit was people thinking that you met him at a meet and greet and being a 15-year-old started
Oh
dating
yeah.
him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Everyone always says that, but I'm like, guys, there's literally thousands of people at these meet and greets. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not
No, it's like very like,
happening.
oh, you take a picture and then like move on. I think like us being the same age, like also is just puts it in so much perspective of
Hmm.
like, I remember being like 15 and like looking at them and being like, I would have killed to date them. You know what I mean? But it just felt like such an unattainable thing, partly because of their status, but also because of how much older they were. So it's
Hmm.
just really weird that that actually did end up happening to someone, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
like,
like I never would have thought I would date any of them or like
yeah,
could. You know, I was like, why
yeah.
would
Yeah.
they? I don't know.
Was that like a weird feeling to deal with once you did start dating Liam?
It was weird in the sense of like when we were at home and when we were first together, like he was so nice and charming and he always seemed so nice, normal and down to earth that I was like, how is he that famous and in this big of a band with like, fans and stuff and he's so normal at home and like, you know, obviously that was before things started unraveling, but then when we
Mm,
leave the house and people would be like following him or something, it would be a little weird to, I guess differentiate the two
Mhm.
things. Like, I don't know. weird to be like, wait, I forgot that he, he has fans and stuff. It just
Mm.
forget.
I'm curious, like, when it started to unravel.
It was after, so we got engaged in November of 2019. And we got together. So we'd known each other like before, but our relationship started in August. So it was pretty quick, like I want to say 2.5, 3 months. We got engaged. And then it wasn't until after we got engaged, kind of before lockdown time, when he started to get abusive. And it was just very like on and off. When he'd be sober, he'd be really kind and nice. And then he'd go back to that. And then as years went on, I kind of realized that he used that as a crutch and an excuse to abuse me and
Mm.
not take accountability for it. And that's kind of when I just realized like this is just who he is as a person and he doesn't care and isn't remorseful. So yeah, I would say it kind of, sorry, that was like a long-winded answer, but
No, you're
I feel
good.
like it started definitely after we got engaged, for sure.
Mm. That's such a weird thing to watch someone's behavior shift like that when you feel like you've already known them and you're like, no, this is a good person. Like, I love this person. And then to just feel that completely change must have been shocking.
Yeah, but I feel like also at the time you don't even realize that it's unraveling. It kind of just slowly starts to unravel. And then when you're in too deep, I didn't even realize I was really in an abusive relationship. I knew that he was doing things and like obviously I would, his team knew and stuff, but I always felt that I was just there to help him, and he'd be like, "Oh, I need help. You're the one that can help me. I'm going to go get help so I can stop, like doing X, Y, and Z to you." And he never would go and do that. So it was just, you know, I feel like it wasn't until, towards the end I was like, okay, like, this is too crazy.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that happened. I feel like that's like something that a lot of people in abusive relationships experience,
Mhm.
trying to like find excuses or just like reasons to justify it. But like at the end of the day, there is
Yeah,
justification
it's
for
fucked
it.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
there's no justification. Because I feel like if
Mm.
you know what you're doing and you keep doing it, it's you really don't care. Because if
Yeah.
I was doing that if I did something to someone on, and then just kept doing it, it doesn't, I don't know.
Looking at it now from an outside perspective and being out of it, I don't want to like put words in your mouth about it, but would you say that there was a power dynamic there just because you were so much younger? It was like this person with so much power, even if it wasn't even in a way of like you being this like big fan of this person, like
Mhm.
there was still that like thing there.
Um, I don't know if it was so much an age thing. Like, yeah, I was young and I feel like I was naive to that world that he was in. And I I don't know. I feel like I was just oblivious to the fact that when I was first with him, I remember my mom was doing all this research on him, and she was like, surely if he was, a certain way, he would have gotten sued or something would have come out because he's so
Mm,
famous. But
yeah.
Mhm.
in reality, he is so famous that he can do all of these things and they're not going to come out. And I feel like that's like the problem right now. And that's why I'm speaking out about these things, is because they are I feel like the power dynamic is like his celebrity status in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And everyone, it's not just him, it's like a whole team of people wanting to just protect a certain image because they're all making money off of him. But if he were just like a normal, how old is he now? Like 30 something year old, um, I don't think the age would have been an issue. And then also
Yeah.
I was homeschooled. I've never been exposed to people with addiction issues. So I didn't really know
Mm,
how manipulative they can be. And
Mhm.
also
yeah.
people have to remember that in One Direction, they probably had the best media trainers in the world, and they're
Yeah.
very good at communicating, talking, not only to the media, but just people in general. So they seem so
Mhm.
charming. Um, so
Oh, that's so weird.
yeah, so I'm like, because I don't know why it just like clicked to me when I was with him and he was on the phone with a media trainer once, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm sure One Direction had the best media trainers in the world. Like, Liam knows how to talk to people so well. He's so charming, but it's scary because when people meet him, they're like, "Oh, but he's so nice." And I'm like, "Well, he's also been media trained since he was like 16 and he's like in his 30s." So,
Yeah.
you know.
No,
Yeah.
that's wild because I've never thought about like that bleeding into like interpersonal relationships. And that's crazy. It's almost like being taught how to manipulate people in this weird
Yeah.
way. And obviously, it doesn't always turn into that. But I was also going to say, I feel like One Direction gave off this aura, especially to really young girls at the time, because they came up in this way that felt so genuine and they seemed like just like these sweet boys. And maybe like some of them are but like I think it's really easy for us to just like look at them at the time and idolize them because we didn't actually know them that well. And especially like I think the way that parasocial relationships happened at that time were different. Like I feel like now it's almost easier to like look at this like pop band, like this guy in this pop band and be like, he's probably an asshole. He's probably not a good person. But at the time, it was almost like, oh no, like they're all good guys. They're all sweet. Like when like What Makes You Beautiful came out, it's like, well, they want us to be beautiful. Like, why wouldn't we
Yeah.
believe them? Like we're
Yeah.
young, like, and they're singing about it. Like, why wouldn't they mean it? Like that, like sort of thing was just so like digestible. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think also the fans, when they first came out, I feel like a lot of the fans were so young that
Hmm.
it's
Mhm.
easy to, I don't want to say that they were manipulating them, but it's easy to craft a certain image and sell it. And I feel like I don't want to like speak on behalf of anyone. I'm just like speaking on my experiences with him. But yeah, I feel like as the fandom's grown up, it's kind of easier. You look back and you're like, wait, that seems like a red flag. He said that, like those type of things. I heard someone talking about this online that it's so hard to believe what I'm saying because they had such a squeaky clean boy band. And
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's also like part of the problem is like you would never expect for him to be this way unless I, would have spoken up and said something because they had that image curated.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of
Yeah.
weird and unbelievable in a way.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And I think like a lot of girls grew up with them in a
Mhm.
way. So it's like almost this attachment thing as well, where like they don't want to let go of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
it's very weird. And you were saying about like being media trained too. I kind of wanted to touch on like that media aspect of, I mean, you probably were aware of like the management, like how that
Mhm.
was like a thing. And that's like crazy because there was this whole fandom who was like so on One Direction's side that they were against like the people who were like managing them, and they
Yeah.
would anytime anything like bad would come out about One Direction, it would be like, oh, management is trying to like push this narrative,
My God, I
which is
can't.
crazy. Like what?
No, I always see this online and I still see it to this day. Even with them as solo. And I
Hmm.
Yeah.
when I was with Liam, they were like, free him from Maya. There was even one conspiracy theory that his management set me up with him and my dad was paying him to date me. And I was like, first of all, I haven't talked to my dad since I was like 18. And I don't like, why would he be paid to date me? And then also they would be like, "Oh, this happened. We have to blame his management. They're trying to sabotage him." I'm like, "What?
Mm.
Like he can fire
Yeah.
his management if he wants. If he he thinks they're sabotaging him, then he can just fire them. Like it's not that controlled. Like they control things about their lives, I guess that they want to have controlled as like stuff not coming out about them, but
Mhm.
Hmm.
it's not like they're making me be with him."
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It's
that's
a grown
crazy.
man.
Like I admit, like when I was 13, 14, like I was buying into that too of like, oh, management is making them like do all this stuff, or like management's like hiding like Louis and Harry from being together, or like all of this like crazy conspiracy theories. And it's crazy that it's still a thing that comes up, like with everything that's happening with you. It's crazy that that's still a point of discourse.
Yeah.
Hmm.
'Cause I used to see the ones online where it was like them back in the band and they would be out doing things on their own time and they'd be like, this is a handler for modest management and they're controlling their lives. I'm like,
Oh,
gosh. Or they even would have that with Liam's manager and they'd be like, see, he's in the background, he's controlling everything. And I'm like, no, he just works for him and he's with us. Like, I don't know, there's not much more to explain about that.
Well,
yeah.
I feel like people just had like such outlandish ideas about what management was, maybe because they just didn't understand it,
Mhm.
especially in like again, like One Direction like coming up and becoming like such a huge thing so fast. I think people were so young and didn't have a grasp on how the music industry really worked or just how like celebrity really worked. And I think that that's an interesting thing because it just like ties back to the idea of like parasocial relationships and not really seeing these people as human and thinking it's this like insanely outlandish thing that like these people really even exist.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about I didn't know about the term parasocial relationships until like the past few weeks.
Hmm.
But I feel like that's such a dangerous thing also
Mm,
because these people really don't know. Like in fairness, people are like saying, why should we defend you? We don't know you either. But I'm like, also, is he accusing me of these things? I'm in an office and I want to go to law school. Like, I don't know what I'd gain from
Yeah.
also making false accusations. Like that's not only that's so detrimental, but also illegal. So I'm like, I don't, you know,
Yeah.
mm,
it just upsets me because I'm also like, there's people that don't have a fortunate background or access to um like the legal field and stuff, and they have the same stories and they can't speak up on things because maybe,
mm.
of um them not having access to the same things. And it's sad because I feel like also they can prey on women like that knowing that nothing's going to happen to them.
I know you mentioned in I think it was maybe some of your TikTok, he preys on One Direction fans because they'll be loyal to him and they won't tell on him. I know we like keep talking about it, but just like the extents people will go to defend this man that they don't like even know, and for them to come on and be like, "Oh, but he would never do this." It's like, how are you making that claim? Like that doesn't make any sense.
It's always like the next excuse, and it's exhausting, but those are the type of people you can't even argue with because I'll just like make my argument and they're like, but what about this? And what about that? I'm
Mm.
like, you don't know him. I lived in a house
Yeah.
for years. Like, this is what I'm telling you. So
Why do you think he keeps sending messages? Like, what do you think he like is even trying to gain from it? Because you probably like know him very well to like understand like his intention. I mean, it's abusive behavior, so you're never really gonna understand it. But I'm just curious what your perspective on it is.
I always felt like it was a manipulation tactic to keep me, I don't know, it's kind of complicated, but I always felt like it was so that I could continue to feel bad for him. And because he would always message me, um, ever since we broke up, like, oh, I'm not well. He would always play with death and be like, well,
Mhm.
I'm gonna die. I'm not doing well. And there was one time I tried to get him help, and then he was like, not taking it, he would text my mom, "I'm not doing well, have Maya contact me," because I wouldn't respond. And it's just always the same cycle.
Ugh.
And every time that, like, for example, when I announced my book, he did the same thing. He called my mom, I think I'm not gonna be around much longer. And
Oh my God.
and I don't play with death. So I'm like, if you say this, I'm going to try and help you no matter what you've done. And I think he took advantage of my family's kindness. And I was like, if you want to go back to rehab, I'll help you, even though, whatever. And not that I ever wanted to be back with him, but he's still somebody's child. He's somebody's brother. Like if that were my brother, I would want someone to help him too. And so,
Yeah.
um, but I always just, in the end, I felt like it was a manipulation. And I'm like, especially after everything you've done, I've told you to leave me alone. As of like recent events that have happened, I can't speak on legally, but like it's just gotten so much worse. But yeah, I always just felt really bad. And I always just felt like because he would always say, sorry, this is such a long answer. It's just like
No,
No,
no.
you're good.
explaining, but he would always just say, I'm so sorry for everything I've done. I can't live with myself, but then is continuing to like try and traumatize me. Um,
Yeah.
and so I always just felt like it was just like a whole manipulation to maybe keep me from not saying anything or keep me on his good side in a way. So
Or
yeah.
keep you at like an arm's length.
Yeah.
Yeah. The messages telling you that he might die, like that's like such a like low level of manipulation and
Yeah.
so terrifying because it's like you feel so responsible for this person. Like if something
Mhm.
happens, you're gonna feel really guilty about it, even though it's not your fault. Like you
Yeah.
like are
Yeah.
your own person. You don't have to take care of this human who like has traumatized you. So that's like so messed up. I'm sorry you've had to
Yeah, I
experience
remember
that.
when he first did that, I was like, because I was always like, I know the lifestyle he lives, and there is a
Hmm.
day where something bad is going to happen. So I would always be like, okay, he's saying these things. I have to help him because if I don't, I will never be able to live with myself if something does happen to him. Because, as I said, he's a father, he has a family. Like, I just want to help. And,
Mm,
um, I mean, up even until my book was coming out, even one of his friends was calling me and my mom being like, oh, this isn't a good time for him. I don't think you should put the book out. He's not doing well. And if something happens to him, not only are you going to blame yourself, but the whole world's going to blame you. And so I was like, just the fact that they just keep trying, I'm like, it is like you said, such a low fucking manipulation tactic. It's
Mm.
disturbing.
Yeah. Well, then to like pin that also on like, oh, like the whole world's gonna be mad at you for
Yeah.
that. Like that's so fucked up. I
They're
did
also
like,
obviously just like afraid of what
yeah.
like that will create for him, you know? Like it's
Yeah.
definitely just fear.
No, for
Yeah.
sure. I found that, yeah, it was very obvious. I was like, okay, now you're just fearful because you just don't want anyone to know what you're really like, and you just don't want to be held accountable.
When your book had come out, was it the same day, I think, that he went to like Louis' show so that then everything like searched about him would be about that because obviously like the whole fandom's gonna like explode about him going to like one of the members' shows.
When I was saying that his friend called me and was like, he's not doing well, don't put out the book. So
Hmm.
he was saying he's not in a good space, all this stuff. I don't want to say like too much about the situation, but just that he wasn't well. And so then when I saw him in Argentina, I'm like, so he's not, you were saying all these things about him not being well, but then he flies like 11 hours to Argentina to be at a concert. I'm like, I know you did that on purpose. Like
Mm,
it was so obvious. It made me so mad as people were like, he's supporting Louis. I'm like, no, he's trying to get himself out of shit. A lot of people were saying, well, you just now said it was about Liam. And I'm like, yeah, I also said that I've been doing, interviews and stuff about it. Also, people didn't want me on their podcast. People didn't want me on their interviews to say it was about Liam. Like, it was very much, that's too controversial. We don't want to touch that territory, which is understandable for legal reasons. But I have done interviews and then they just don't get printed because of, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes on his end, but it's not like I haven't been trying to say that. And it just took me
yeah.
going to TikTok and just saying the truth for, people to understand that.
Mm. No, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a surreal thing that like TikTok can do that and give like that platform that like major news outlets and interviews like can't give. Because it is
Mm,
just like you being genuine and speaking your truth, and there's no third party to filter it out or like strip it and be like, no, we can't say this anymore.
mm,
Yeah. Cause I feel like even with the media now, it's like, you never know. And I also don't blame the media because there have been so many lawsuits against them. Example, like Johnny Depp and stuff suing the Sun and
Hmm.
everything, that I understand they have to be cautious with what they print. But I
mm.
was even willing to be like, get me in touch with your lawyers. I'm going to have my lawyers send over proof for allegations of making. And everyone's just like, too scared, which is like
But
understandable. But at the same time, it's like, they also do like story swaps and stuff, like celebrities. So it's just easy to like get around that kind of thing.
I think it's still very like this in our society where people are really trying to protect men, especially men who are loved. So I think that's a big piece of it.
About your book looking forward. I'm just like curious to know your journey of just writing it, I guess, like to start and like some background if you just want to like talk about yeah, like your process of writing that. And it's classified as fiction. The main character is like Mallory, but it's a true story.
So a lot of people are like, the whole fiction argument. So some of the things that fictionalize the book are obviously the name changes. Some of the cities are different. Like I say, I'm from Tennessee in the book when I'm from Texas. Some of the timelines are a bit skewed. And then also, for example, another big point was people were like, this can't be about Liam. Because when I was talking about the abortion, he said, oh, I'm not ready for a kid. And in real life, that's obviously not the case. But for privacy reasons, I just wanted to leave stuff like that out of my book and just tell my story. So that's
Mm,
kind of like why it is fiction.
mm,
Because if you do something that's nonfiction, everything has to be so factual and you can't leave anything out. And obviously there are
yeah.
a lot of things that are worse that I did leave out. So it is fiction inspired by true events. Everyone wanted to be like, no, this is about 20 other people in one book. And I'm like, no, it's not. But I actually got the idea because have y'all seen the After movies or like, you know,
Oh
the
my gosh, yeah.
Yes. Oh my God.
yeah.
I like read the fanfics when I was in middle
Oh, really?
school. Yeah.
So I didn't know it was fanfic, but I always liked the movies. And so the second one came out and I wanted to go see it. So Liam and I went to the movies to see it.
No,
And
sorry, the
No.
image of that is insane.
yeah, so this was like around after like lockdown time.
Did
And
he know it was a fanfic? Like,
so I didn't even, so we were Googling it after.
Oh my
We
God.
we thought it was kind of funny. We were like, this movie's kind of jokes, like it's funny. And so it was like, oh, inspired by One Direction fanfic. And it kind of named out, I think it was on Wattpad or something.
Mhm.
yeah.
So he was like, oh my gosh. And so we got back home and because he had known that I was I've been writing children's books. I just haven't put them out or really finished like the last set yet. But so he had known about that. He know I like to write. And
Mhm.
he was like, and my obviously like my degree was in creative writing. He was like, oh my gosh, since you love to write, and everyone says you're the real YN on Twitter because you used to be a fan, like you live like real life fan fiction. You should write a book about us. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. I never thought of that. But then I never knew how, so I kind of started writing. And then also at the same time, I was journaling like what I was going through in COVID, like separately, just, you know, for me. And
Mhm.
so kind of at the end of our relationship, I was like, I'm going to use like my experiences to finish this story to help other women because at the end of the day, like, yeah, you read fanfics and there's always a happy ending, whatever. And this is kind of like the real life version. And but when we were together, I never knew how to finish it because we were engaged and I was like, are we really gonna get married? We're not married. Like, how does this end? So I just put it off. And then when we split up, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, make this a project I'm gonna work on. And so that was kind of how that came about. Yeah, it took a long time because I self-published, but um yeah, it was definitely worth it because I feel like in those times I always felt alone and I was like, why are these things happening to just me? Is it just me? But it happened to so many women and I never even realized that. So I just want like a girl to read it and be like, you know, this can happen to anyone. It's not your fault. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like not find comfort in it, but just feel less alone.
I was just gonna ask if you felt like writing it and especially like finishing it after you guys split, if you feel like it helped you like process everything.
Yeah, definitely because I would go to therapy and stuff, but I'm not much of a therapy type person. Um, I don't like using my words when I'm talking. Just like I don't know, I just felt weird like talking to someone about it, but I feel like almost rewriting what was going on and put so much emotion into it because it is in the first person. Like I
Mhm.
wanted people to really get that emotion and my perspective, what was going on and like how I was feeling in my head and stuff that
Mhm.
it didn't trigger me, but it definitely brought back up a lot of emotions, but I feel like I was suppressing them because I want to be tough and be like, you know, just put everything down. But I feel like it was therapeutic being able to write it. And then obviously sharing it with people is scary, but people need to discuss these topics and they need to be heard and people need to share their stories to help others. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it was definitely like therapeutic for me.
The events that happen in the book, like I'm assuming those were all true, like the behaviors and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's insane. That's like diabolical that
Dude, the axe thing is
yeah.
insane.
Yeah, people were because people were like, these things are so crazy. But I'm like, do you think my mind is that
Yeah.
Yeah.
to come up? I'm gonna like, let me just make up my fiance chasing me with an axe. Like that's why would I make that up? And also, why would I write about that and like make him look like that if it wasn't true? If someone wrote that about me and it wasn't true, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna sue you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
was like,
Reading the like clips online because I saw like pages taken from the book that someone posted on Reddit like after like all of this was resparked. Um and I was just like, how are people not taking this seriously? Like considering like what you included in there and after you were like, I'm telling you, like this is true. This is like literally a true story.
yeah,
But it like made me question the internet a lot and just like the One Direction fandom in general. In my head, I was thinking about it and I was like trying to like understand what would make people not like process such like horrible things. And I honestly think that like a part of it, people literally used to write fan fictions like the book you wrote. So I feel like it almost like desensitized these young girls to abuse.
I feel
And it
like
like doesn't make it okay for anyone to like not take seriously, but I don't know. I think that like kind of explains it a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like maybe people are desensitized, or it is just so unbelievable that it's like, okay, she must be making this up.
Mm.
Because some of this stuff is crazy. Like, people are like, is this true? And I'm like, yeah. But it is so insane that it's like, even looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I never even really had time to think about anything really. And it wasn't until after, it was more like towards the end when I was just getting exhausted and I just like called my mom one day and I was like, I really just, after like something happened, I was like, I just don't deserve this. Like, this is, I think when you take advantage of someone's kindness too much, I just hit a point where I was like, no.
No, and it's a really hard thing to like stand up for yourself in those kinds of situations. So you should be really
Yeah.
proud of yourself for doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank
And
you.
to just like let go of a relationship and like let go of this person that you did like love at one point and that you fell in love with, like to let
Mhm.
go of that is so hard to do. But
Yeah, no, it definitely, especially when they're so manipulative and the relationship is so toxic that and when they don't leave you alone, it is hard to like move on from that. But I was talking about this in another podcast, but for him, when he went to rehab for 3 months was the the best thing that could have happened because I had no contact with him and I was able to just process things on my own and just think
Hmm.
about things without him constantly trying to be in contact. So, yeah, I was like grateful for that, really.
No,
yeah.
yeah, that's so helpful.
I did kind of want to go back a little bit to what you said about like just like you and Liam going to see after.
Yeah, no.
Because I remember like being in middle school and my friends and I would all like wait for the newest chapter of After to like come out on Wattpad and we
Oh,
would like
really?
read it. Yeah. And it was
I
like
Dude,
it
it
was
was such a famous
it was
fanfic at the
and it was a
time.
crazy like the movie. I don't know how much you know about the fanfic itself, but the movie like played it down. It made it way less bad than it actually is because the
really?
fanfic, Harry's like aw like he's so abusive in it. Like he's like
What? I didn't
awful.
know that.
He's like
I looked
terrible.
I looked on Wattpad after I watched the movie and I was like, how does this have 1.4 billion reads? Like, that's insane. I didn't even know that it was such a huge thing.
Mm.
Whole like premise of like the first book. Well, he was super abusive, but he made a bet with all of his friends that he would like have sex with the main character. And then he like showed like proof of them having sex to his friends. Like that was like the entire book. And it was like a crazy, like the way that it was described and stuff was so graphic and so intense. And it's also so like ironic looking back on it too, because I'm pretty sure because Harry was like the main person, but then all the other band members were in like the friend group. And I think
Mhm.
Zayn was also a villain. I think Liam was like might have been like one of the good guys. Yeah, he was like
The
her like
stepbrother.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
And
he was
he
like
was
the
like a
nice
good
guy.
yeah.
Stop.
That's crazy.
I'm
Like
like
that's a
That
making
is
these
crazy.
so
like
ironic.
characters.
Yeah.
But
No,
that's
but
crazy because it's just like what people used to write. Like it's just so reflective of like what that like was going through with like our brains at 13.
yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, honestly.
Yeah. And that's also so weird because I feel like people like wrote that kind of stuff and they had like it in their own head as like this bubble, but then the fact that like Liam like went to a movie theater and like saw the movie version of it, like no one could have ever imagined that. I feel like that's what
Yeah.
would have happened. So it's just a really weird thing because I think a lot of times in fandoms fans think that everything they do is kind of like kept into only the fandom and that the people that they're idolizing aren't ever going to see it. And so yeah, I think that's like even like because I remember with One Direction, fans used to be so mean about the girlfriends like of the
Yeah.
band members. Like Eleanor, I remember was so like people were so mean to her. And I feel like that was something where they were like, oh, like the boys aren't gonna see this, like Eleanor's not gonna see it. Like this is just like for us. And I feel like it was a lot of stuff that happened like that.
Yeah, no, they're like they don't I feel like any of anyone's girlfriend.
Had this like territorialness over the person who they were standing. I feel like it would come out of like, oh, I was on like this person's music early, so like I have this like right to them almost. And I feel like even like we probably all like do that now with like our favorite media, but it's in just like a way different way when you're applying it to an actual human.
Oh yeah, they feel like they have not only like full ownership over someone, but also like they know everything about them.
And I think like we talked about this a little bit before, but them just being like teenage boys and they started out who were all attractive and like charming and everyone was like, "Oh, we love them. We'll defend them no matter what."
No, yeah. They definitely, especially I feel like when you're that young and at that age, you kind of just you get so famous and you can get anyone you want and can do whatever you want, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then you end up just like Liam said, our fans are gonna believe us over like don't say anything, like that type of
Yeah.
thing. His head got so big and I truly do think he feels like he is so inferior and can really do whatever he wants. And that's what's so dangerous about it, is like that whole thing.
Mm.
Yeah, well, him saying that, like, and him knowing that he has that power is an insane thing. That he can acknowledge that and admit that, and then still, like he's aware of everything he's doing.
Oh
You
yeah.
know?
No, and it's like he went on the Logan Paul podcast. Like, obviously, this guy is bad news, okay?
Yeah, no, oh my God, it was so bad.
We covered it a little bit about making the book fiction. Like, I know everything would have to be very, like, factual if it was nonfiction, but if you make a book fiction and it's a true story, like, can they do anything about it? And you said was like pretty true.
That's why I said inspired by true events,
Mhm.
because I didn't want to make it like a memoir or a nonfiction book. Because also I feel like the story itself kind of, I don't want to say it reads like a fiction novel, but it almost is, as I said, like a fanfic. Like it just
Yeah.
doesn't seem real. And so I
Mhm.
also didn't want people to read the book and be like, I'm reading, like this boring memoir. I kind of wanted to make it more just like about this story in a sense.
Like, I was just curious about, like, pretty much if you can get in trouble for, like, admitting that this is, like, a real story.
So even though I am saying it is fiction inspired by true events, I've come out and say it's about Liam, but I I come from like a heavy legal background, so I always just like with anything that I do in life generally, I'm very cautious. Not
Mhm.
because I'm saying anything that's not truthful, but just because you never know. And so I had lawyers like in America and in the UK read it, and then anything they had questions on, I like showed them proof or whatever the case may be. Um, so I mean, I don't know what you can't sue for libel or like defamatory
Hmm.
statements because
Yeah.
it's all true. In the UK, there was an issue of they have privacy laws there because there's no freedom of speech. So they were basically saying that even down to how like Oliver is portrayed in the abortion chapter, he could be like, well, that's his like right to privacy. But I mean, I'm willing to take that risk of like, if you're going to sue me for privacy over something that's actually true, I'm not going to let you stop me from using my voice. Like, that's just the bottom line. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was just kind of a risk I was just willing to take. And
Mhm.
there's so many things you do that aren't like you don't care to lead a private life. Like I already know that. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
like
Like, yeah, there's a lot you can say against that, I feel
don't
like.
Yeah.
hashtag strangers then like
Yeah.
that, you know.
No, that's like, yeah, because I've been seeing a lot of things on Twitter of like girls like coming out about their experiences and stuff, and it's just so like fucked up.
I've
Yeah.
had a lot of girls message me privately, like a lot of like really just like terrible, nasty things. And
Ugh.
not like towards me, but just like this
Yeah.
they were in
Mhm.
general. And like just like really disturbing things like people have messaged me and they're all like, oh yeah, I was a huge fan of him or I was a huge fan of One Direction. And this started happening. And I'm like, it's just that's like the whole power dynamic that's like messed up to me.
Mhm.
Like, that someone's your fan and you're gonna prey on them in a sense, prey
Yeah.
because even if they
Yeah.
are, people are like, "Yeah, but some of them are overage." But I'm like, "That's still predatory behavior because
Yeah.
you're using that to your advantage because you know that they're never gonna, you can still harass them and do whatever you want,
Hmm.
like, they're not gonna tell on you." And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just bizarre.
Yeah. No,
Well,
it's literally grooming.
No,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is, like, so messed up.
I'm always like so curious, like in situations like that, if like the person is like inherently just like that, and if they are like that way before they get famous, or if like the fame and stuff plays a role into it. And obviously there's like really no way to know for sure, and I'm sure it's like different for every situation, but I feel like that's a really interesting thing to explore too, of like, oh,
Mhm.
if this person never like got this level of success and never got this many people idolizing them, then would they still behave the way that they do, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if you're willing to do some of the things, like if Liam's willing to do some of the things that he's doing, I feel like whether he's famous or not, like if you have that mentality. Like, I feel if I got famous, I wouldn't try and groom my fans.
Yeah.
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 You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know, you never really know, it just depends on the person, but then also I feel like they start doing it more when they know that they can get away with it, and then they really are
Yeah.
like, "I'm never gonna get caught," and they have that mentality. So, I feel like it kind of just goes hand in hand, I don't know.
I did want to say also like the thing in the book about or like what had happened with the abortion was also like so that was like crazy like thing to read about too and was so fucked up. And it's like how does a person like do that? Like I don't know. It's insane to read that and then I know we've talked about this, but then people still defend him and just be like, "Oh, like why would or like say that you're lying or anything like that."
But again, like, sorry that you had to experience that because, like, literally just an abortion on its own is like traumatizing. So to have someone be so like awful throughout the process of that,
I kind of talked about this in the book where I wanted to do it surgically in the hospital because I
Mhm.
wanted to have, like, nurses and people around me because it is scary.
Yeah.
He was like, "No, do it at home, like, I don't want people to find out and, like, the press find out if I'm there in the hospital with you, like, I can't go with you, so do it at home," and then I do it at home, and then he leaves, so, like,
Ugh.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of so I also added that in the book because I've heard a lot of people just, like, tell me and or women online, have the same experience with, them going through an abortion at home alone, um,
Mhm.
and I didn't realize how I don't wanna say it's common, but it's happened to so many women, like, it's not I always thought, like, "Why is he acting this way towards me?" "Why me?" When in reality, there's so many men that act like that, and it's scary.
Yeah, there's just like a lot of inherent shame. Just like when men like embarrassed of like their partner getting an abortion, like that's like insane because it's like also you're not the one having to like literally have your body altered for this procedure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just don't understand anything
Yeah.
about being a woman or, they just like to downplay everything, but if they went through what was going on, they would be falling apart.
They would be like a mess. Like,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Men can't
Yeah.
even handle when they, like, get a cold, so
No,
No,
yeah.
they turn into such babies. Like,
they really are, and then they wanna call women, "Oh, you're crazy," or, whatever, and I'm like, "We can handle so much more than you guys."
Well, also like if they had anything limiting like their rights or anything, they'd like that just like wouldn't happen. Like that's just not
Oh, no.
how the world works for
I
them.
feel like men have never had their rights limited ever in
yeah,
their
no.
entire like, since the beginning of time, so they don't even know what it's like to have rights stripped from them. I don't think women could have bank accounts without their husbands until I think it was, like, the 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, like, less than 100 years ago. We've come a long way, but men have just never had to feel, any sort of restriction.
Well, it's
Yeah.
also crazy because then like the like power struggle that they still have, even though there's like really not a threat to them, is
No.
very interesting. They have this fear of getting their power taken away, which I guess makes sense because they are the ones in power. But it's just crazy because it's like, what more do you want?
Yeah,
No,
I'm like, I
literally.
don't understand what y'all are complaining about all the time.
Yeah.
Have to just power through and, like, keep their heads up and not complain in a sense, that's what they expect us to do. But yeah, they would be, like, freaking out if they were going through what women had to go through.
Yeah. I want to ask, this is like kind of off topic, but you mentioned like in the beginning that you were going to law school like next year. And I was just curious about like what made you want to go to law school, if it was anything that you experienced. I know you also come from like kind of a legal background with your father and
Yeah, so I'm applying to law schools. I've always wanted to be a lawyer and go to law school, because a lot of my family are lawyers, like my uncles, a lot of my mom's side and stuff. So I feel like it's just always been in me to go to law school. And a lot of them are all like personal injury lawyers, but I feel like it really hit a point when I was kind of going through some of this stuff where it wasn't about like I had been through such horrible situations with, my ex and stuff, but there's a lot of women who, for example, like have kids with an abusive partner and then don't have the financial means to leave or to get a lawyer or, to have that sort of help because um I mean, lawyers are expensive. So I want to go to law school and like also help women, for free or like start some sort of foundation in a sense. I don't know like what the logistics are, but to help women in situations like that legally because I feel like it's sad, but it is so expensive and it's that's a lot of reasons why women stay in those situations is because
Yeah, that's really
Oh,
cool.
that's really amazing. I hope
Yeah.
you get into law school.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. I know I'm
Yeah.
hoping to. I'm like,
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
anyone will do.
That was like, I feel like because I like have thought about going to law school and I like want to, it's just so expensive. But I'm like, if I went to law school, I'd want to do like just like pro bono work eventually, or just like help people who like don't have the money because it's crazy how expensive everything is. And like, if you don't have money, you're basically just fucked pretty much.
Yeah, especially even without children. I know like family law is like a big thing, but even for example, like women in domestic violence situations where I mean, a lot of men can get away with what they're doing because, oh, I'll threaten legal action against you and I know you can't do anything about it because lawyers are expensive. So
Yeah.
that really irritates me. And that's why I also want to like help women for free because that's not fair that men
Yeah.
can really get away with anything.
I know I like said this before, but it's just crazy that like you're the same age as us and I have like dealt with these experiences. Also, just like you are talking about it so maturely and with still like a lot of like kindness for someone who was so awful to you. So I really like just have a lot of respect for you for that
Oh,
and like
thank
you're doing
you.
great.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Mm.
you so much.
Oh.
So, so we have one more thing before we
Yeah.
end the podcast.
It's like I don't want to be the one to say it.
I knew you were looking at me.
Yeah.
We just like have our guests say a thing like every episode where we're like just trying to get this internet guy on. Would you be okay with like reciting something if we send it in chat? This bit that we've been having, we're like tired of it already, but we can't stop
Yeah.
now. We're in too deep.
It's also not like when we have like a guest on where you're talking about serious stuff,
Serious
and then it's
stuff.
like we have to like send this, and it's like, guys, oh my God.
So is it pronounced Josh Ovale?
Ovaye.
Ovaye?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I, Maya Henry, hereby request Josh Ovaye for collaboration with the Internet is Dead podcast. Please, Josh, be a guest on the podcast. We miss you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So has he been
And
on the podcast before? I'm confused.
No, we're
no, we're
trying to
Oh
trying.
get
no.
him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like this whole bit because he like is kind of disappeared from the internet, but we like grew up watching him, and it's like a whole
Oh,
It's
big
like, oh,
YouTuber?
get it, guys, because it's funny.
yeah. But it's like, oh, I'm sick of the bit.
Oh my gosh, I don't know who that is.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Google him. He's the what was that one?
The
the
Vine.
I'm
Jared guy?
Jared.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I know who you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
Where did he go? Like,
No,
Yeah,
literally.
that's what we're saying. It's like no one knows, but
gosh, I didn't even know he disappeared. I love him. Well, I
but
hope you liked him.
Thank you.
yeah. And thank you again so much for coming on and for like yeah, being open about everything and talking about everything. We like appreciate it a lot, and there's so many people who appreciate it, and yeah, I can't even imagine like the bravery it takes for you to share everything you've been sharing.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me. I know a lot of people like don't want to talk about these types of things. People don't talk about the fandom, especially like in podcasts or interviews. So but I think it is an important part of like what is going on. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about
I
that.
feel like it just helps explain kind of like why people are still defending him or why people are. And then there's also just like the obvious misogyny and the people like just not believing women.